Felix is here, as you can hear, for All Over the Map. We do this every Friday morning, a quick look at stories behind local places and things. This week, it's peak watermelon season, and you might have seen those stickers on certain melons that say grown in Hermiston, Oregon. And boy, it's like you read my mind, because when I'm picking out watermelons, I'm going, where is Hermiston, Oregon?
Well, Hermiston is in eastern Oregon, not too far south of the Tri-Cities and the Washington border, which is the Columbia River down in that part of the area. 7 miles south of Umatilla, Oregon, home to the Umatilla County Fair, which is actually underway as we speak. I've driven through before on my way between Portland and Spokane, but I've never actually stopped. Now, the population is about 20,000 people, which makes it the largest community in eastern Oregon. By comparison, the Umatilla County seat of Pendleton to the east has only 17,000 people. Now, the town dates to the early 20th century, and early federal reclamation and irrigation projects made it an agricultural center early on for all kinds of produce. They looked in the newspaper archives, and the watermelons grown there have been marketed regionally since as early as 1910. This has been a thing for a while. They've been fixtures in the Seattle area grocery stores for at least the last couple decades. Now, that name Hermiston is not the original name for the town. Hermiston city manager Byron Smith told me in the early 1900s there were two separate communities on either side of the railroad tracks.
Maxwell Siding was one of the names, and then for a long time before that it was called 6 Mile House, because it was a stopping place along the road for travelers, and that was back even before the railroad.
And the name Hermiston comes from an unfinished novel by Robert Louis Stevenson set in Scotland and called Weir of Hermiston. It was chosen by an early settler in 1905 because he liked it and because the post office said that name hadn't yet been taken by any other American town. And at last check, it still hasn't been taken by any other town. Yeah. And the original community of Hermiston is still part of Edinburgh in Scotland. Now, of course, along with a riveting narrative, we often like to provide practical information here on All Over the Map.
Please.
We've got you, they might say. Hermiston watermelons are, of course, very tasty, and a ripe one should have a particular sound when you knock on it like a door. It almost rings rather than thumps. So, okay, I made this recording last night at a local grocery store. That's the lengths I go to. I don't just look on YouTube to find audio. I go out in the field and collect it.
Intrepid journalism.
See if you can tell which of these is the ripe melon.
No. Maybe. No.
See, that's a terrible recording because you can't tell.
Were they all right?
No,
Was I wrong?
the first one's actually has that kind of
that one
almost
sounded
rings like
thud.
like you're knocking on a door. The second one's a little more
Play
of
it
a
again.
thump. Okay.
Play it again. I gotta hear that.
Let's see if I'd advance it automatically.
Yeah.
Hang on a second here.
I see. Okay.
It's kind of ringing. No. See that dead thump? Should we hear it again? No.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, if you don't want to talk to strangers at the grocery store, don't knock on melons, because everybody has an opinion of what makes a best.
You got to be very discreet. I was kind of hunched down into that big cardboard bin they usually come in, so no one could see me. Now, okay, that difference isn't distinct enough, obviously, but fortunately, Hermiston City Manager Byron Smith told me about a visual test for watermelon sweetness, which I previously was unaware of.
Make sure it has a good spot on it, a yellow spot.
The sun spot.
Because that means that's the part that was sitting on the ground. They don't want it moved while they're growing. They want it to stay. And so that shows that it was grown, the right way.
And apparently resting on the ground or not being moved makes it sweeter. It's not getting disturbed while it's growing. So if you feel inspired to drive from Seattle, it's 259 miles or 4.5 hours. If we left now, we could be there in time for lunch. Yeah, exactly. Now, the Umatilla County Fair, I mentioned, it's happening now. To country artist Joe Nichols is playing there tonight. I don't know who that is, but apparently he's something. He's a thing. And then next Saturday is Hermiston's MelonFest in downtown with the Watermelon Bathtub Races, the Watermelon Seed Spitting Contest, and the ever-popular Watermelon Costume Contest.
I'm a good cherry pit spitter, so I might need to get in on the watermelon.
It's a flatter profile on the thing. Okay. And the last thing, Hermiston High School is so big, they compete in the Washington Conference. So theoretically, they could win the Washington State Championship if they had a really good football team one year. Wouldn't that be bizarre if Hermiston, Oregon won the Washington Championship? People's heads would spin.
Absolutely. It'd be breaking news right here, and Felix would be on it.
It would sound like this.
Very good.
I'm just still stunned that you used Umatilla as a reference point to where Hermiston is.
Where now? That's what we can depend on Felix for. Thank you, Felix.
I've got you.
We'll be back with traffic next.